Lemon came out and was very apologetic. What was your view of everything that happened to you?
Well, I don't see it as happening to me. He portrayed with Bo Selector. His portrayal of me, as I've said before, I don't mind people joking about me at all. It was the big lips, the big nose, you know, of the character. And a lot of people have said since, why didn't you say anything then? They're assuming that I didn't say anything at all. The other thing is people are saying, you know, come on, lighten up, it's just a joke. But to those people, I'd say, would it be okay if someone like, you know, amazing broadcaster Vanessa Feltz, who's unashamedly and very proudly Jewish, if she, who was famous at the time as well and still is, if they characterized Vanessa with a big hook nose going around saying oy vey and counting money, or someone like Gok Wan with Asian eyes working in a I don't know, a Chinese takeaway or something like that, they're all abhorrent. Yeah. I just had to put up with it publicly. I didn't privately. I didn't realise that actually until fairly recently how badly bullied my children were as a result of that. And Lee chose to make an apology. And let me just say, since Lee made that apology, I have been subject to even more vile abuse.
Trisha, that's shocking.
You see, that's so disgusting.
Utterly shocking.
It's so disgusting.
There is so much toxicity in this. You were trying to explain why lampooning you in this way played into a racial stereotype that had an impact on you, on your children, and on other black people. And yet you then receive a backlash.
Now, I've had thousands and thousands of people say the same thing. And you know, Craig David, I know it came out that he went through a tough time. Some, you know, ultimately you have to continue. There weren't a lot of black people in the media at that time. We, as you, Piers and Susanna know, we sign all sorts of contracts when we go to work with a network, as we should do, and there's certain things we can and can't do. But right up until last night, if I look at my phone, it's probably still coming in. You've ruined his career just because you can't take a joke, you know, and threats. And, you know, I've said to my children, and it was my children, Lee really sweetly talked to my daughter, Billy, on the phone for a very long time about her experiences. And he was horrified at what she went through. He was sweet enough to say, as a father, I feel so bad about this. I need to do something. No one forced him. He chose to say, sorry, but I feel...
And I know that in his public apology, Trisha, that he said he just didn't realise at the time how offensive it was.
Well, it's not just down to Lee. It's not just down to Lee, is it?
No.
I mean, somebody commissioned it. Lots of people. There was an executive producer, and the whole thing, I don't want it just to be about me. I really don't. It's about systemic racism. And we have to look at how the media, I mean, things have changed. They are changing.
Well, they're changing. I mean, they're changing before our eyes. I mean, a lot of big stars, David Walliams and Matt Lucas, Anton Deck apologising for blackfacing in previous shows. Let's bring in Tony Sewell here. I do feel there's been, since the George Floyd killing, a real sea change happening. The question is, what's the most effective way to affect real change? You know, the statues issue could turn up to be a bit of a sideshow, couldn't it?
Yeah, I reckon it would be a sideshow. For me, working in a charity that really takes black talent and talent from across the community, particularly young black people, and puts them into top universities and into industry. I think that what I found strange is that my phone hasn't stopped ringing, Piers. You know, it's that kind of suddenly places that I used to try and bang on the door and wouldn't get in. Suddenly there's a lineup for wanting to use our services. And I think the issue here for me is that this thing is a distraction, because I think Susanna asked a really good question of the guest before about what exactly do you want? Where is the beef here? What is the reality of it? Let me tell you what it is. if you look carefully at the young people who are on that Black Lives Matter demonstration, they weren't, I can go back to the 80s. They're not a set of disengaged youth running around. Most of them are at university or have been to university. Yeah, this is almost like a lower middle class revolt here. And what you've got here are young people really wanting opportunities. And so the key now, the key thing the big change that we can make is how do we get that great black talent to the needy companies that need all that tech talent, all that sort of ways of kind of changing their companies and making them more diverse. How do you get those people to those companies? We've got a problem in the UK, and it goes to working class youth as well. How do you make that shift across? You know,
yeah, well, let's talk to someone in business. Steven Bartlett, you are an award-winning entrepreneur. One of the things that we hear is you can't be what you can't see. That young black people need role models, and without those role models, that's limiting aspiration. How can we, and if anything is going to change, we have to increase representation, don't we? It's not about statues. It's about increasing employment opportunities, improving education opportunities, increasing life chances.
Yeah, so I see the conversation around statues as a total distraction from the real systemic issues at hand. And, growing up in the UK as a young black male, I went to a school where pretty much 99.9% of my peers were white, and we didn't really learn about black role models. We didn't learn about black role models in business. And what I did learn through the media and other forms of, entertainment and music was an image of a young black male that was certainly not something that I aspired to be. And we get this a lot through, our role models as young black men typically come from movies and media and headlines and other things. And there's this theory in psychology called labeling theory, where if you tell a group of people they're a certain thing, they are more likely to act out that behavior and more likely to act like that group. And when I think about how we solve the issue of systemic racism for young black men like me, it has to start with education. We can spend a lot of time trying to deal with statues or even the effects of systemic racism, but until you address the cause of systemic racism, it's still going to rear its ugly head. And so education, I think, is incredibly important. I think teaching young black kids like me about, successful business figures and role models in the black community, which gives them something to aim for that they can relate to. I think the next big thing is education and employment opportunities. When I look at all the data across hiring and pay disparities, young black people have less education opportunities. They're also less likely to go to university. When they get a job, they're less likely to get paid the same as another ethnic group for the same work. But again, we can spend time on distractions and get caught up in that.
No, I agree. Right. We have to spend time on exactly the issues that you are describing.
Let's bring in Kevin Maxwell. Kevin, you were a former police officer. You wrote a book called Forced Out, recounting in pretty shocking detail the abuse that you suffered for your race and sexuality. This, obviously, everything we're seeing now came from what happened to George Floyd at the hands of horrific police brutality that we all watched going on for 9 minutes as his life was snuffed away. Talk about the British police and the reality of what is going on in our police force. They've come under attack in the last week from, Black Lives Matter protesters and from far-right protesters. I've got a lot of sympathy for many of the police here, but clearly the police has some bad apples too. What do we do about that?
Hi, Piers. Hi, Susanna. I served in two of Britain's biggest police forces, Greater Manchester Police and London's Metropolitan Police. There's not much I don't know about policing. I've done the job for 11 years. My book, which you mentioned, I've just written regards to systemic racism in Britain's police. Look, we all know there's lots of good officers out there, lots of good police officers out there. I know many, but there is a problem when it comes to systemic racism in Britain's police. And it's this which we need to sort. If you're a black man in Britain today, you're 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched, 3 times more likely to be arrested, 3 times more likely to be tasered, 4 times more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act, twice as likely to die in police custody with the use of force or restraint, and half of our young people in prisons are black and brown. And this is all 20 years since the report into Stephen Lawrence's death. It's just not good enough.